Hi there, I'm Asher Harris. I'm the instructor for American Transcendentalists. And this,
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm his daughter.
great,
So, what are you teaching this semester?
great question, Beck. This semester I am teaching American Transcendentalists, Spirituality Without Religion.
What does that have to do with your students?
That's a really good question, Beck. I think that the reason that this is interesting is because in today's day and age, there's a lot of people who are interested in the concept of spirituality and to think of how it relates to concepts of religion. And by putting the course together and by giving it the title, Spirituality Without Religion, I think what Fordham is trying to do is relate the story of the American Transcendentalists, a group of thinkers who lived in the 1830s and 1840s, to what's going on today and how people think about issues of spirituality and how they think about religion.
What thinkers are you going to address?
So we're going to focus on four specific writers. There was a whole bunch of people who were associated with the Transcendentalist movement, but we're going to focus on four of them. The first of them is the most famous is Ralph Waldo Emerson, and he's really famous because I think that he represents sort of a turning point in American history in terms of religious thought, in terms of literature, in terms of criticism. You see a lot of books with names like From Jonathan Edwards to Emerson or From Emerson to Today and stuff like that. So Emerson was a really transformative figure in American history. The second person that we're going to be covering is Henry David Thoreau, famous as the author of Walden.
HDT.
HDT, classic, one of the classics of American literature, Walden, and he's famous for taking a little bit of a different approach to transcendentalism than did Emerson, but he was really kind of a student and a follower of Emerson. Third, we're going to be reading Orestes Brownson, not as famous. However, there is a statue of him on Fordham campus.
Cool.
And the reason is because he was kind of a unique character. He started out life, really grew up without much religion, then he became a Unitarian, then he became a Transcendentalist, and then after Transcendentalism, he became Catholic.
Oh.
And what we'll be learning is kind of the relationship between Transcendentalism and 19th century Catholicism, and how one specific person, kind of specifically Brownson, how he basically went through Transcendentalism as a phase, but then rejected it and became one of the leading thinkers in American Catholic history. So I think that'll be interesting to a lot of the people in this group who may be interested in American Catholic history. And last but not least, we'll be reading Walt Whitman. He lived a little bit after sort of the age of the Transcendentalists. He really lived mostly in the era of the Civil War, but he kind of took the Transcendentalist approach to the next level. So we'll be reading some of his poetry, and we'll be seeing how the themes that we'll be talking about are carried out in the writings of Walt Whitman. We'll also be reading some secondary sources along the way, but those are the four primary thinkers that we'll be covering.
Any topics that you haven't mentioned yet?
Actually, there are a number of topics that we will be focusing on.
Okay, what are they?
So the first one that we'll be covering is really that idea of spirituality and religion. And what are those two concepts? What do we mean by spirituality? How does it relate to religion? What are they? The second one we'll be really focusing on Emerson in this is the concept of God. What was God to Emerson? How did he kind of take the classical understanding of God and reinterpret it? And closely connected with that was Emerson's concept of nature. Emerson really embedded God more deeply into his understanding of nature. So we'll be looking quite a bit at that. And another topic that we'll be looking at is the topic of America.
Okay.
What is America? Because prior to the Transcendentalist period, there was a strong idea that America represented a divine mission, that America wasn't just sort of a bunch of people who landed on the eastern shore of the Atlantic Ocean, but that there was some reason, some purpose. And that was certainly true throughout colonial history. But Transcendentalist thought, coming sort of in the period after the Revolution, when America was really forging itself as a distinct political entity and as a distinct cultural entity, again, took the next step in that. And in addition, because transcendentalism rethought the idea of what God is and what nature is and kind of the relationship between God and the universe that we see, um, necessarily what they also had to do is rethink what that meant in terms of what is America, what's this country that we live, what's its meaning. The transcendentalists, obviously, living in the 1830s and 1840s, it was kind of this watershed period. Um, Post revolution, post War of 1812, the country really had a sense that it was going to be a viable political entity, that it was distinct from England. Um, and during the course of that period, it was growing a lot. Louisiana Purchase, the Mexican War. It went from a fringe of colonies along the ocean side to an entity that really did go from the Atlantic to the Pacific. So there was that. But by the same token, it was the period of beginning of fracture when kind of that idea of the slavery controversy was starting to really become um, a more powerful political force, and the idea that the country might actually break up over the issue of slavery was starting to become conceivable. So it went, America went from a colony to a nation to a nation divided in a very short period of time, and the transcendentalists are going to have to wrestle with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that should be an interesting topic.
Yeah, it sounds cool.
Yeah.
So the question on everyone's mind, how are you going to deal with virtual asynchronous learning?
Very tough question. I think the answer is, first of all, we're going to have to play it by ear. We're going to have to figure it out as we go along.
You're going to have to wing it.
We're going to have to wing it a little bit, but we'll do our best. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to split the group into two. So everybody will be, the whole class will be divided into two groups, and hopefully that'll work. Everybody will know that they're either in one of two groups, and that they'll have to come to class every other class meeting. On the times that they're not meeting, what they're going to be doing is they're going to be doing asynchronous work. So the first thing that every student is going to have to do is read the assignment. Second is they're going to have to watch an asynchronous video, kind of like this, a lot like this. And then what they're going to do is I'm going to divide each section into study groups. Each study group will be 2 or 3 people. So it's really a close group. And what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to take the time between the difference between an hour and a quarter and the length of this video. So think about it as 45 minutes to an hour each week, just working together with your small group and working through the topic for the week in a really close study environment. I'm going to give everybody an assignment just to sort of keep everybody on track and to make sure that everybody does the work. And the assignment will kind of consist, certainly at the beginning of the semester, of 2 parts. The first is going to be content-based, so it's just really give me a very, very short summary of what you discussed in your study group to make sure that everybody talked about it. I'm looking for things really like kind of like a sentence long. And then I'm going to ask some questions about kind of how the process is going, just to see how people like the idea of being in a miniature study group. Are you getting along with the other people? Is everybody contributing? Is everybody prepared? So just to kind of check up that things are working.
Okay.
So that's the second step. So just for every single student in the class, you're going to start out by reading the assignment, watching the video, going over the reading with your study group, and then you're going to come to class the following either Monday or Thursday morning. And when you come to class, I will be working on the assumption that everybody has already read the work and talked about it for an hour, so that we're going to be diving in pretty quickly on the assumption that everybody is familiar with the written material. And I really want to have a very discussion-oriented class. I want to take advantage of the fact that everybody has read and talked about the material before we get together, so that we can dive in and I can start pulling together the written assignments that I got, see what thoughts people come up with, what questions people have, and just reach out to people and call on people within the class and say, hey, I read your assignment. This is what you seem to have focused on. Let's talk about it within the larger group, and that'll be the way we do it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So aside from these check-ins,
Hmm.
do they have any assignments?
They do have 3 written assignments.
Okay.
We do not have any tests though, so that's
Pretty
popular. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to have 3 papers. The first paper is going to be kind of like a midterm timing kind of thing. So it'll be it'll be due around the week that midterms are due, and that's just really based um, on class discussion and the group discussion and so forth. It's not really a research paper. It's just take one of the topics that we've covered in the first half of the semester and write just kind of a brief paper about it. The second paper is a little bit more unique from the types of papers that most people write in college. I'm asking people to select uh, a given natural object, uh, a flower, a rock, a plant, a river, something along those lines, and just kind of look at it and then write a paper kind of along the lines of what the transcendentalists did. The transcendentalists felt very closely that there was something sacred in nature.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'd like to do is have people in the class try to do their best to replicate that thought process. Look at things, figure out what about that thing that somehow connects you to the universe, something about how that object got to be where it is, what it symbolizes perhaps, what it means to you. We'll obviously talk in class about how to get that done, but it's a little bit of a different experience. I've suggested, people can take their object from wherever they like. They can go around campus, they can go around, different parts around campus, whatever. I think the botanical garden,
Your favorite
my
spot.
favorite spot, is probably a great place.
Might catch him there.
There's the the old growth forest, the Thane forest, the rock garden. There's a lot of great places there where you can just kind of go and look at a rock and look at a tree and really see what it is that you have to say. And then the final paper is a little bit more close to kind of a traditional paper that a student might write, and that's going to be a more lengthy paper, kind of like a 15-pager-ish kind of thing, and that's going to be research oriented. That's going to be a paper where you take one of the writers that we've covered in class or one of the topics that we've covered in class, and you're going to be asked to do independent research, go into that topic in greater detail, and make some type of argument uh, that is novel and more creative.
Sounds great.
Sounds fun. I think it should be like an interesting
I hope
class.
so. Who are you going to interview on your videos?
I don't know. We have to come up with all sorts of interesting guests for us to interview. We'll see who they may be. Hopefully the students will watch the videos to see who comes in as a guest
Maybe our
interview.
cat Frank.
Maybe our cat Frank.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Did I miss anything?
I think that
Did you miss anything?
I think that were all the things we wanted to talk about for now.
Sounds cool.
Sounds cool. So we'll see you soon. For the next edition of asynchronous content. Thanks a lot, Rebecca.
Sure. Bye, class.